This is the Content Strategy Insights podcast, episode number 128. When I book guests for this show, I tell them that the vibe I'm looking for is a chat in the hallway after a conference presentation. This interview is literally that. Aladrian Goods and I caught up as the Button Conference was wrapping up in Seattle last month. Aladrian is a content design leader at Intuit. She has a lot of insightful things to say about her quick ascent into a leadership role there and about the role of culture and values in content practice.
Welcome to the Content Strategy Insights podcast, where accomplished content strategy experts share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. Our mission is to democratize content strategy, to make its principles and practices accessible to everyone. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 128 of the Content Strategy Insights podcast. I am super delighted today to have with us Aladrian Goods. Aladrian's a senior content design manager at Intuit, and she and I are both writing the post-conference high. We just wrapped up the Button Conference in Seattle. And so welcome to the show, Adrian. Tell the folks a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
What's up, Larry? Thank you so much for having me. Like you said, we are literally riding the waves of a fantastic Button Conference. It's been an incredible few days of just like being with content design folks, content strategists, people that I've seen online, including yourself, on Zoom, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and finally get to hug it out and high five. So I'm feeling really good. Let's see. So what was the question you asked?
Well, yeah. So actually, let me set this up a little bit too, because we wanted to talk. I wanted to have you on because we met like a year or so ago, and I thought this kid's going places. You know,
hey, I'm older than you think. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. But anyhow, then we decided we'd talk on the show today about coming into a leadership role in this, and then today the last day here at Button, there was this morning Michael Restiano talked about content like management in content design, and then Michael Metz talks later about content leadership. So I'd love to let's start with your take on the difference between management and leadership.
I love that. There's a quote that I like that like around leadership is that leadership isn't getting people to do stuff because you told them to do it. It's more so about getting them to take action because they want to. Right, and I think both Michaels actually, Michael Metz and Michael from Instacart, set that up really well, right? And I think for me, the difference between leadership and management, I think management is more so like the title, and there's some administrative stuff, there's some like HR responsibilities, there's like responsibilities for growing the career, et cetera, that are specific to that role. But being a leader is about what I said earlier, is like, hey, how do you get folks to take action on something? Not because you told them to, but because you want them to. And you don't need a title to be a leader in that case. You can lead from wherever you are.
Yeah, well, and that's how I perceived you when I first met you. I say, well, this is a leader. Let's see if she can turn this into a management job at some point. And here you are, like not even a year later.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Well, tell me about that So you were like a content designer working on product stuff at Intuit.
Yeah.
And then so tell me about the differences between like how you perceive things as a practitioner and how it's different now that you're a manager.
So I started my career at Intuit and in content design really, like full time, was in 2019. And I joined Intuit's professional tax department where we built professional tax softwares for accountants to use to do taxes, because that's what you do with tax software. And I was the first in-product content designer for that team. So sometimes when you're dropped into a space and you're the first and the only, you have no choice but to lead. Because everyone knew that they needed a content designer, they knew that they needed someone in this space, but no one, including myself, really knew what to do or how to do it. And I was lucky to have been a part of a community of practice at Intuit that has, leaders at the director level, right? Like Tina O'Shea or Jen Schmick at the time, who had been doing a lot of content strategy and content design that I can lean on and be like, hey, I think I'm supposed to be doing this thing, but can you help me understand if I'm doing it right? And basically taking their experiences and their their feedback and insights, making it my own, and then applying it to my role as a content designer. So within my first year, I also want to give a shout out to Megan Casey's book, The Content Strategy Toolkit, for making me look super smart. Like I knew what I was doing when I first got. I didn't know what I was doing, but that book was such a cheat code for me there. And the first year just did a bunch of listening, a bunch of asking questions, as well as doing the things in the toolkit to get better, to try to solve customer problems and organize how we were going to do content design for our professional tax team. And then to your question, about the transition, so I was in that role for about 2 years. I had gotten promoted from content designer to senior content designer. Then the light bulb went off, oh wait, I'm still the only one. And I was getting a bit bored with the work, because no matter how much I get promoted, I'm going to be doing all of the work because it's literally still just me as a person. So thankfully I had a great manager in Angie Neary, who I can be pretty transparent with, and working at a company like Intuit that values mobility. I was able to kind of talk to her and be like, hey, I'm thinking about, I want to do something different. I think I want to do something, have more impact at scale, et cetera, et cetera. So we were able to figure some stuff out, talk to some people, and then there was an opportunity on the team that I'm currently on to be a content design manager for that team. And management wasn't something that I had quickly decided that I wanted to do. It was something I'd been thinking about. Scott Shoemaker, he had dropped a talk about being a reluctant manager at first, and what you need to know and the questions you have to go through to identify if it's something that you should be doing or you could do. And then I think at last year's Button, Andy Welfley had a panel or had a talk around this very similar things, and I'm like, okay, I think I can probably make this happen, but maybe in another year, a year or two. But this opportunity within Intuit came up, and the hiring manager and the VP were kind of knocking on my door like, hey, we think you could be the person for this role. And I just took the leap of faith after talking to a bunch of people and learning and trying to understand what it actually is going to look like. And I took the leap of faith to prove them right in the interview, and the rest has been history.
Nice. Hey, so two quick things. One, I don't know that you knew this when we started this conversation, but the immediately prior interview that I've done that hasn't aired yet was with Megan Casey, the author of the book. So there's some elegance there.
Nice.
But I also want to ask you, one of the things that Michael Restiano talked about this morning in his talk was the difference between individual contributors and their role and the opportunities to grow there versus management. And did you already, it sounds like you kind of had management in mind already, because this wasn't a hard sell for them to get you on board, it doesn't sound like.
Right. So for me, it's I love people and I care about people deeply, and I think, it's not, I can be a content designer, I can be, a marketer, I can be whatever, but if I'm leading or connecting with people, it's just a part of who I am. So it wasn't unbeknownst to me that, hey, if you're good with people and you're great at making people feel productive or feel encouraged, inspired, then you might consider being a design manager one day. So it wasn't like I'm going into this job because I want to be a content designer, then I want to be a senior, then I want to be a design leader. It wasn't really that for me. But now that I say that, I had a conversation with my former VP of design, James Helms, and he, out of a whim, slacked me one day. It was like, hey, what's your 2 to 5 year plan? And I'm like, all right, well, I want to get paid to speak, and in 2 years, and then in 5 years, I want to lead a dope design team. And it's important to share your goals with people who can reflect your reality back to you. Because after I sent that to James, he was like, you can get paid to speak now, and you could be leading a design team in 2 years. So
wow. So Intuit is that just how they operated Intuit? They have a pretty clear path forward for?
I don't know. We do have our design profiles, which is clear. You can have the IC track where it's individual contributor all the way up to, I think we have like, it's content designer, senior content designer, principal content designer, and content strategist is like the top of the top. And then, on the same side, it's like once you hit principal, that's the senior manager role on the management track, and you can go that way as well. But for me, being someone who had recently joined the field, and you hear about years of experience and all this stuff, it didn't really feel like a reality in my own thinking until James was like, you can get paid to speak now. And then I had speaking gigs like almost immediately after that conversation. And you could be leading a team in 2 years, and within a year and a half, less than 2 years of us having that conversation, I had the opportunity to grow my team.
That's wild. So you had there's a tiny delta between those two. Like you had your idea, like here's what I want to do in X amount of time.
Right.
It all happened much quicker than you thought. Are there other things? Were there other like not like assumptions or just kind of like, oh, this is probably how it is, and that you've learned that have panned out differently, like.
As it relates to leadership?
Like in terms of like the work, like because like, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. What were you doing before this? Because everybody has a really interesting path. I don't know your path into content design yet.
So my path is tangential, I guess. I went to school, studied at University of California, Santa Barbara, and got my degree in communication and professional writing. And I started my career in marketing events, so doing events for a tech company in Santa Barbara, and I was also doing a startup with some friends from college that failed miserably, ended up having to move back to LA to move in with family, got laid off from a bunch of different jobs, but content was a piece of all of this, and user experience was kind of a piece of all of this. But it wasn't until I moved to Texas and lived in Texas, where I was working 3 part-time jobs I was way overqualified for, as a grocery store clerk, a sales representative in a sports fan store, and a call center representative for a Fortune 500 company, but not in the nice building. We were in the basement of that. And that's when I discovered UX design. I took a quiz. UX was at the top of the list, and it was like writer, musician, artist. And I'm like, yes, but no. Let's see what UX design is. And once I discovered UX design, I got the language for the things that I've been trying to do, where I could see the thread from all the things, from marketing events to content marketing to, writing emails with the brand voice and tone. Those things started to show up for me, because it's all about people. It's all about problem solving. And I was excited to discover UX design. So after, I was working at a grocery store, and a woman and her husband came through the line, and her husband looks at my sweater. I was wearing my university sweater, and says like, oh, she went to that school too. And we had this wonderful, conversation around, like, found out we went to same school, 10 years apart, lived in the same dorm, from very similar places, in a role that's very familiar to me, because my uncle had a similar role in Texas. But anyway, long story short, that person ended up working at Toyota Lexus, gave my resume to the hiring manager, and I was able to work at Toyota and the Lexus Guest Experience Center as a digital communication specialist there as well. And that's a fancy title for like answering emails, chats, and and social media posts for customers complaining. And how I got into content design was I was studying UX design while I was working at Toyota, and LinkedIn did a great job of referring me a job at Intuit, the content design role. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I think I could do this. It's like the UX design and the writing stuff that I've been trying and doing for so long. Let's go for it. I showed some friends, asked some questions, talked to some mentors about it. They're like, yeah, 100%. I think this is meant for you. And it's been a rocket ship ever since.
Yeah, that's great. And you have I think so many people get into this with just it's mostly the writing thing. But for you, is it safe to assume that it was the people stuff that led you to UX, and you were already doing all the comms stuff?
I think I've always had a passion for technology and people. Mm-hmm. But I thought in order to be in tech, you had to learn how to code. And I tried it and I hated it. But shout out to all the engineers and front-end developers and folks, we can't build products without you. I just can't, and I will not be the person building the product.
Right. But that hatred of coding, you still have some understanding of it, though. Does that help you?
I have some understanding, and I think my initial intent for, even getting into the coding aspect of it was to know enough to be dangerous and enough to be impactful if I was ever working with an engineer.
Right. And that, that kind of reminds me too of the typical scenario, and I don't know if I assume this is the case at Intuit, that there's this sort of the teams are mostly product people, engineering people, and design people. Is that the setup at Intuit?
Yeah, so we have a triad. We got the PMs. In some cases it's the quad, because we like to include our data analytics partners in there. So we got the product managers, your tech lead or dev leads, our product development and design. And at Intuit, the team I'm on now, I lead the content design team for the virtual expert platform. And we have several design practices. So we have product design, interaction design as, traditionally. We have visual designers, we have content designers, we have service designers who are thinking about, our end-to-end customer experience, but also the top to bottom of that as well. We have design research, and I don't think I missed anyone. Yeah, we have, and design technologists as well to help us.
Front-end engineers?
Yeah, front-end engineers who understand UX to help us build high-fidelity prototypes.
That's so interesting. The service design, is that because that's kind of a new discipline in general, but especially in our world, is that fairly well established at Intuit? Or
I think so. So I think we've had some great folks come over from Capital One to help start establishing our service design community of practice, and I love it because I think content designers can empathize with the team that's new and it has to teach and help people get on board and then be able to just showcase their value. So it is a growing practice for us. And I think the things that service designers create, content designers can really leverage to help influence and improve the customer experience at specific high points and low points.
Yeah, because I'm really curious about that, because it came up a couple times just in talks and in conversation at Button, the emergence of service design. And it's not hard to picture, because I don't know, for folks who aren't familiar with the way I understand it, it's more an organizational design thing where you're designing the front office, the front end experience, but also the back end, or orchestrating all the back end stuff and kind of coordinating those two, which the benefits of that to our work seem pretty obvious. 100%. But tell me, do you feel that when you talk to, when you were talking to other people here at Button, do you feel like it almost seems like you'd be more advanced in your practice or something because of that, or differently advanced in your practice?
Well, I think service designers and content designers and researchers too, we should all be kind of best friends in a sense, because I think we all are trying to uniquely understand the end-to-end experience, but also how are the things we're doing in the backstage is called, and the front stage is where the product and experience lives. In the backstage, what are the processes, what are the gaps in our communication, our relationships between our cross-functional partners that are having huge impact on the front stage, which are customer problems. And I think a lot of that comes down to people and process. And I already told you how much I care about people.
Yeah,
so.
No, and you're in the right line of work, I can assure you, because this comes up all the time on this podcast and just in conversations that we think, we're in the tech, most of us are in some technical thing. And you think, it's all about tech. No, it's 5%. Maybe processes and management, maybe 10 or 15. It's all about people. It's
really about people.
Yeah.
And I think it's the relationships that really matter. And if you can, understand people, or just understand what motivates people and what they care about, you can get a lot done
Yeah. Well, tell me how that manifests in your work, because you're obviously, I got to say, just for folks who weren't at Button, Aladrian is like the star of the show. It's like,
no, not at all.
You were getting shout outs from the stage. I mean, everybody here loves you. But so it's clear that you're a good leader, you're clearly a
good
community
person.
leader,
Yeah, sure.
and well known here. But how does that manifest in terms of like helping your folks get the work done?
100%. I think my team knows my 3 fundamental like core values is fun, freedom, and impact. And when it comes to, fun, it's not necessarily about, like, yes, I want to have fun. Like, I want people to feel comfortable being their full selves and being able to, like, be transparent, be able to, like, connect and not always be so serious about the work. So it's more about, like, having fun, but also being inclusive and creating a sense of belonging for folks to enjoy each other. And I want people to leave me better than before I interacted with them. And then for freedom is I like the freedom and flexibility to be able to try new things, to be able to fail, to be able to just be able to work from anywhere, be able to come to talk at Button, to be able to attend Button and be on this podcast right now. Like, I love that stuff too. And then impact, like the impact is of course about working on high priority stuff and showing the value of my work in content design. But it's also thinking about like, okay, how can I improve this person's experience? Whether it's a meeting, whether it's a collaborative working session, or whether it's just a, high five in the hallway, getting coffee. Like, I'm always thinking about that. And I start with that because I think having core values as a leader is super important, because people then know what to expect from you. And then they also know that, oh, okay, if something's not going on if Aladrian's not moving from fun, freedom, and impact, then like maybe I should check in with her, or like maybe, and then it's also for me too. It's just like, yo, okay, I'm tired, like I need a break. Maybe I need to, like not take on everything. And I think my team knows that, right? And I think being transparent with that up front, it makes it easier for us to kind of connect. And I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but
but I do. There's a couple things I want to follow up about it. Is one, how did you arrive at those values? Like, did you have a long list and condense it to those 3, or tell me about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the program I did for my UX boot camp, there was an exercise in the career sort of development space of the program that really helped me like sit down and think about it, right? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, you got the skills now. Yeah, you want the job. Yes, it looks like it's a lucrative role. All the things. But what I really appreciate is that, like, hey, like, what are your personal values, and what do you want, like, out of work? And there was an exercise. I mean, this was like 3 years ago, so I don't remember exactly. Yeah. But I know that those were the top 3 for me.
Nice. And then something else you said in there makes me feel like that, and just knowing you as a person and how you operate, I'm assuming that like your folks, like you said, like if your colleagues or the folks working with you, wait, that wasn't very fun or impactful, or are you okay, Aladrian?
Yeah, like, are you good? Is that sort of like right? Because sometimes, I mean, I ain't gonna hold you, like, I'm not fun all the time. Like, there's been times, like, management, and if we can talk about this a little bit more, like, some things that changed or didn't expect is the amount of effort it was going to take to influence up.
Oh, interesting. So it's, for you, is your role, it's as much about managing up as down? Exactly.
Like, my team is excellent. Like,
oh, so you're like, no. We're set.
No. They make it really easy for me to, I'm not managing performance. I hope I don't have to manage performance. They're excellent. They're, pretty sufficient. Shout out to Ali and Jeff, to go out and take some of the coaching and just go do the thing. And I get the positive feedback from our design partners and our cross-functional partners about like how awesome it's been to have more content design folks on the team. What also I'm learning is that it's not just about being a content design manager, but being a design leader is about cultivating belonging and coaching within the space too. In culture within the space. And there's some fundamental like paradigm shifts that need to happen, or there's some fundamental things that we need to do, because we've been really just running and like delivering work, and it's been working, right? Like we're doing, our business unit is doing pretty well.
Is that a risk of having a good team, that you got to get not complacent, but sort of like momentum?
I just think like the virtual expert platform as an organization has only been like formalized officially for 2.5, maybe 3 years. So there's we just been kind of like doing a thing, you know? So I think there's a real opportunity for us to like slow down and connect and build relationships cross-functionally as humans as well, so that we can continue to, you know, build great products that power prosperity.
Yeah. I don't want this to be like a clickbaity thing, but like, what are the 3 things? You know, like
what are the 3 things that you say?
But you must have like a few things that you do to like achieve those goals, like in the, like keeping.
I think I actively listen. Like I actively listen, and when I say actively listen, there's like 3 levels of listening. Is okay, what are people actually saying, and also like what aren't they saying? That's one. And then the second part of that listening is like, okay, cool, what are they saying, and like what is that experience like for them? And then the third is like, hey, what are they saying? What is the experience like for it? And like, what is the impact that it is having on that person, their work environment, their projects, their situations? And if I can listen that deeply, then it's about asking questions of like, hey, how may I help you? Like, or like, what is like where it's not about me telling the people what to do to solve their problems, but it's really like how to like asking the right questions to help them discover it.
And it's not like a checklist. It's like a framework.
It's a framework
of ever deeper listening. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, it's like deeper listening. So that's the first one, active listening. Yeah. I think the second part is like asking powerful questions. And then the third one is like really speaking truth to power. I think John Paz did a really great job of like, you know, talking about like when to tell your boss they're wrong and why you should today, a fun talk. Which is a great talk, and I love that too. But I'm always mindful that when I do it, it's in a respectful context, and that I've also like deeply listened. I've also like asked questions. So when I need to speak truth or, you know, ask a very direct question, that I have the sort of buy-in and understanding that doesn't feel like out of left field or, you know, kind of reactionary.
Got it, yeah. I can't believe it. We're coming up close to time.
Oh my
goodness.
And
we're both, just for context, we're both like, come on, we just got out of the car. We had a beer with some friends before
we
came up
exactly.
here. And we're like, come on, yeah, Seattle, a nice sunny October night.
It's beautiful in Seattle here today. Like, this is a great view.
So we should wrap up pretty quick. But before we do, I want to give you one last, is there anything that's come up that you want to elaborate on, or there's just on your mind about leadership in content design that you want to make sure we get to?
I think what I want to say is that, you know, as content design continues to mature and grow, and we're finding that we don't need a seat at the table, that we are the table. Shout out to Riley. that we are the table. Like, we need folks to step up and lead. It doesn't have to be with a title. It doesn't have to be, you know, the director of content design. You don't have to be, some people we need like your voice. Some people we need your action. Some people we need, you know, like for you to lead the way only you can. But I'm super thrilled to be considered a leader in this space, and looking forward to creating more so you all can join me so it's not so lonely at the top.
Excellent. Well, I love that, because you just echoed the very last section of Michael Metz's talk today, where he talked about what
I did there?
Yeah, you totally wrapped up the whole conference and this thing. Oh, hey, one very last thing. What's the best way if folks want to follow you, like on online social media? Or?
Yeah, you can find me on the internet. It's Aladrian Goods. That's Aladrian. Last name Goods. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. But just beware on Twitter. I'm not talking about content design rarely, but you know, it comes up from time to time. But that's at Aladrian I'll give it to you. I don't.
It'll be in the show
put it in
notes,
the.
too. I
check
just like
the
to
show
have it
notes.
in the
it's
recording.
Aladrian. No_L, I think. Basically, my middle name is Noel, and I don't like lines. And I said I never lost. All I do is win. But whatever. Now you can cut that out of the script.
No, that's good. That's fine. Well, thanks. This was super fun. I gotta say, this was the
great.
perfect way to wrap up Button. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Larry. I know this has been a long time coming, but I appreciate your patience, and it's such a joy to do this with you today and spend these last few days at Button together.
Yeah, likewise. My pleasure. Completely.
Awesome. See you
Thanks
soon.
much. Cheers.
Later.
Thank you for listening. If you can think of a friend who might enjoy this episode, please share it with them. And please join us again for our next content strategy interview.